Hello, in today's video I'm going to go over the steps to create a USB boot drive for the ESXi installer, and in particular in a Linux environment. Now there are plenty of videos and instructions out there that go over this procedure for Windows. I happen to use a Linux environment for my desktop. In particular, I use Fedora Linux, and so you can see here I'm running Fedora 27, and VMware does provide instructions, as you can see here on the left side, on how to do this in a Linux environment. However, when I first followed these instructions, it did not work, and later in this video I'm going to show you how to make that work. But first of all, I want to go over these instructions with you and kind of show you the type of problem I ran into, just in case if somebody else is doing this and runs into the same issue, you can kind of confirm that you experienced the same problem that I did, and later on I'll show you how to make that work. So to start here, let's go over the VMware instructions. It says that the prerequisites are to have a Linux machine with super user access. So here I'm already on a root shell, so I have super user access, a USB boot drive or flash drive, the ESXi ISO image, and the syslinux package. So just to show you what I have here, I do have the syslinux package installed, and it is version 6.04. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to insert my USB flash drive. And before I insert the drive, what I like to do whenever I do something like this is to just follow the message here, and that way I can kind of see how this drive shows up in the system. Okay, so here the USB storage device is showing up as device SDB. Okay, so let's go ahead and follow the steps here. So first step is to create a partition table. So let's do fdisk dev SDB, and as it exists right now, there is a partition table that we will delete. And let's create a new one. Default values should be fine. Yes. And we need to change the partition type to FAT32, and finally mark the partition as bootable. So the important thing here is to make sure you see an asterisk under boot and that the partition type is FAT32. So now that we've got that correct, let's go ahead and write that to the flash drive. Okay, let's see. Rereading partition table failed, device resources. Alright, let's just run fdisk again just to confirm. Okay, it looks like everything's fine. Alright, so next step is to create the FAT32 file system. Let's format this. Oh, contains a mount. Alright, I guess it automatically mounted that. Let's undo that. Alright, so let's on to step 4 here. So we'll run syslinux on dev SDB1, and then we're supposed to cat over here this MBR image into the USB boot drive or the flash drive. What I found out is that this path doesn't really exist, so I'll just show you that. see, there's no such file or directory. And unfortunately, there's locate. So if we do that, we find that it's been relocated to user share syslinux. So we're going to do that instead of what's in the instructions. Okay, and now we have to mount this flash drive and the ESXi ISO image to copy over the content. So I'm going to create a couple of directories. Now, the VMware instructions put these directories called USB disk and ESXi CD-ROM under the root directory. I don't like to do that, so instead I'm going to put them under the /mnt or the /mount directory. So let's go ahead and do that. USB disk, mnt, ESXi. Okay, so now we can mount the flash drive. First partition is now mounted, and then we're gonna mount the ISO image over loopback. Okay, let's take a look. So here's the USB flash drive mounted under mount USB disk, and the ESXi ISO image mounted under mount ESXi. So next step is to copy the contents of the ESXi ISO image and into the USB drive. So let's do a recursive copy here to USB. Okay, so let's go inside this USB disk folder, and you'll see all the content we just copied over. And now we are at step 8. We have to rename the isolinux config file to syslinux config, and we have to make one edit to this file. That is here on the append line. Give it a -p space 1. Let's go ahead and save that. And so at this point we're pretty much done. Let me just sync the changes to the drive, and let's go ahead and unmount the USB disk. So at this point, according to the VMware instructions, this USB drive should be able to boot the ESXi installer. So to try that out, I have a virtual machine that I will use to boot the USB drive. So let me go ahead and start this up here, and then I will redirect that USB flash drive to the the virtual machine here, and let me just kind of reboot the virtual machine here. Okay, so number 2. Alright, so you'll see here it does say syslinux version 6.04, and that's the version I have, but it says failed to load com32 file menu.c32, and so it keeps trying and fails. So this is the error that I ran into when I first followed these instructions, and so I'm going to go ahead and shut off this machine here, or this virtual machine. And okay, so I actually did a lot of digging to figure out what was going on here, but the short story is that basically the version of syslinux that is used in the ESXi installer, and I guess when these instructions from VMware were written, was an older version, and since then the syslinux package has made a lot of changes and no longer works with those older files. So there's a backwards compatibility issue with the newer version. And so and that's kind of why I pointed out the version of SysLinux that I'm using. So what we need is an older version of SysLinux, and probably the easiest way to accomplish that is to simply run an operating system that has an older version of SysLinux. So the main point here is, if you're doing this in whatever Linux distro you prefer, if you have a relatively recent version of SysLinux, you're probably going to run into the same problem that I did. And so the workaround here is to have a virtual machine. So I have myself here another virtual machine. It's running CentOS 7, and this particular distribution has SysLinux 4.05, as you can see there. So we're going to follow the VMware instructions in this virtual machine instead of doing it in my Fedora Linux distro. So I'm going to go ahead and redirect that USB drive now. Let me go ahead and run dmessage again. Just want to make sure I can see the USB drive getting connected. So I'm gonna, okay, so there we go. USB mass storage device detected. It's now connected as STA. Alright, so we're going to basically repeat the steps from the VMware instructions again. And so just to be sure, I'm going to kind of start over from the disk partitioning. So let's do this. STA print. So there was the partition we created last time. Let's go ahead and delete that again, and we'll create a new one. This is basically the exact same thing we did last time, and change the type. Win30 or Win95 FAT32. Let's mark it as bootable, and now write those changes. Okay, and again we're gonna format it FAT32. Okay, so that brings us to step 4. Run SysLinux on dev STA. And let's see if we actually have, yeah, so this is going to probably be in user share SysLinux as well. Okay. MBR, there's the MBR image. Okay. Cat. All right, so that's done, and I already have the ESXi directory and USB disk directory created under /mnt. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm just mount dev STA1 to /mnt USB disk, and let me see if I've already connected to, no, let me connect to, alright, so that connects the ISO image, the VMware installer ISO image to this virtual machine, and that should be dev SR0, which is the emulated optical drive. So let's go ahead and mount that under ESXi_ISO. Alright, so now that we have the USB drive mounted, the ISO image mounted, we're going to repeat the same steps as we did last time. Do a recursive copy of the contents, of the ISO image to the USB drive. in the USB drive, and we got to rename ISO-Linux to syslinux. And we're going to edit that one line on the append line here. Okay, let's sync those changes. Let's make sure all the writes are flushed to the USB drive, and let's go ahead and now unmount this USB drive. Okay, and then I'm going to detach this from this virtual machine. So it's showing up on my host again. So now let's try booting this in this other virtual machine where I'm testing the installer. Let's redirect this and reboot. Okay, so again, we're having a little bit of problems here, but you can see now this time it's syslinux 4.05, which is the version that we were using in the CentOS 7 virtual machine, and we're still having this problem with the menu.c32 is not a COM32R image. So okay, so there's a couple, well, at least there's one more thing we need to do here. So let's shut that down, and let's go back to our CentOS machine, and I'm going to redirect that USB drive again to the CentOS machine, and let's go ahead and mount that drive again. So there was a problem with the file menu.c32, and I'm not exactly sure what the problem is here, but what I found that works is that, see, if you run file on this thing, it just says it's a data file for some reason, but we have a copy of this menu.c32 over here as part of the syslinux package, and if you run file on this particular copy, it says it's a COM executable. So I'm going to use this copy of the menu.c32 over what was provided by the VMware ISO image. We'll replace that. So now you'll see that that says it's a COM executable. Alright, so let's sync those changes, unmount this USB drive again, and let's try booting it up. Alright, going to disconnect that drive. Alright, let's put this virtual machine away and bring back our VMware installer test virtual machine. Start it up. Let's connect that USB drive to this, and let's do a reboot again. Okay, now let's boot the USB drive, and sure enough, now it boots fine, and the installer will start in a few seconds here. So there you have it. That's how to create a USB installer for the ESXi installer. So basically, you have to use a older version of syslinux. In this case, I use the one that's bundled with CentOS 7, which is 4.05. And at the end, you have to copy one extra file, the menu.c32, that's included with the VMware ISO image. Doesn't seem to work. with that version of syslinux, and so just copy the version of menu.c32 from the syslinux package, and you'll have yourself a working ESXi installer on a USB flash drive. Alright, so hopefully for anybody who might have run into the same problem that I did, this video will be helpful to you, and have a good day. Alright, bye-bye.